Roscoe, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, all the way from Australia today. And Roscoe, you've worked on, you've driven, you've ridden some incredible machinery over the years, and the one thing that links them all together is trying to go as fast as you can go. I was just wondering if you could first of all give us a kind of overview of the machinery that you've driven and ridden over the years, starting off, I think, with the Crazy Horse.
Okay, okay, Scott. Well, yeah, the Crazy Horse was probably a long way through my racing career or my ambitions to be the fastest man on earth. But as a kid, I had quite a few projects I'd started and nearly completed before they were taken away from me, type thing. But yeah, Crazy Horse was it was a V8 Chevy powered motorcycle, 350 Chevy powered motorcycle that we put together in Brisbane and raced over there. It was quite a very impressive machine. Had no clutch, so you'd fire the engine up and then rock it off a stand and to make it go. And the most amazing thing with it was that I did the best time on it ever with a 9.1 second pass at 172 mile an hour. But the bottom line is that it's obviously the quickest way down a quarter miles in a straight line. Well, Crazy Horse used to take half a mile to get there because the back tyre would come across the Armaco on the other side and go out in a big arc and then come back in the lane it started from. It's probably half a mile to get there. But yeah, very, very impressive machine. And it's something where we campaigned for probably 4 or 5 years and travel around the country and New Zealand with it on quite a few occasions. And it was certainly a great crowd pleaser, but a bit too scary to ride. So
can I just take a second to understand what the start sequence was like? So basically, it's a big V8 with a couple of wheels attached, but you said it didn't have a clutch, so it's a drag bike. So you sat there at the start of the strip, revving its nuts off, I suppose, and single gear, right? Is it a single gear with the rear tire spinning, and then you kick out the stand?
The stand was part of the bike, and it just rocket off that stand that clicked up behind the back wheel, and and it had so obviously a V8 engine's quite wide. A Chevy V8 engine's quite wide. So what we had to do is put a transfer shaft behind the engine, and one chain had run off to the where the flywheel was onto the transfer shaft, and then come in line with the back wheel. So it ran 2 chains, and the starting progress was quite unique. That you'd have to push it into stage, bring the pre-stage on, bring the stage light on. Jinker would go into the back of it, the stand would go down in place underneath it. And then we needed someone built like Arnold Schwarzenegger to start it. So the starting pack was actually a flywheel in a cage with a starter on it that plugged into the harmonic balancer. And when you'd be on the bike, you'd say, right, hit it, and the starter would spin the engine up. And then as soon as it would start, as soon as it would fire up, this is a really hot engine. It had the high kicker pistons and injectors and Renault methanol and everything. It was a really hot 350 engine. Anyway, as soon as the engine would fire, the engine would spin up straight away, and the poor guy starting would have to pull the starter out of the harmonic balancer, then wrestle with it into the back of the truck. So I put it in the back of the truck that had a brake on the flywheel. So then he could apply the brake to stop the thing, but with just the gyroscopic force of picking this thing up and trying to put it in the trailer, you needed someone really strong. But once that was done, the start vehicle would back out of the way, and 1, 2, 3, 3 big revs, then rocket off the stand, and then you had your heart in your mouth. The back wheel, you try and control the back wheel. It's doing, God knows, the back wheel's doing 200 mile an hour, but but smoke and crap going everywhere. But as I say, it's a bit like riding on ice, and you had to really steer the bike. And when the back wheel had come across to the other lane, touching the Armaco on the other side, it's a bit like riding a speedway bike. We had the handlebars cross right up, pointing the way you want to go, but you're massively sideways onto the track. And that's quite amazing, just to hang on to that throttle. And then, as I say, once the tyre started to catch up with the track, she'd come out in the big arc and then make its way back onto the right-hand side of the track and then sail through. So, yeah, it's quite an exciting ride.
So, so, the wheel would be spinning. You'd obviously get a load of wheel spin from a standing start. How long did it take before you got traction again, before it wasn't wheel spinning up the track?
Well, it was just starting to get traction as they're going across the end of the quarter mile. So you could just feel the front end start to pick the front wheel up in the air. And then one of the greatest thrills riding it was that they had a kill button, kill switch on the left-hand side. So as soon as you go through the quarter miles, knock that switch off, then pull up on the engine braking. So it was pull up really quick. Obviously, as soon as the engine went out, you're on engine braking. It was quite a good ride, slowing down, slow down really well. Plus, they had good brakes, and you pull up on the brakes. But on a few occasions, the chain would break, and just as they're coming in grit and traction, all the loads on the chain. A couple of times, the chain would break, and the chain would end up back in the pits. So it was like a snake going down the quarter mile, all sparks coming off from the chain and end up back in the pits. And obviously, then it was pretty hard to pull up. So a couple of times, we had to run right in the braking area. But yeah, it was a unique bit of gear, and we said it was the first V8 bike in the world, and probably not quite true, but we'd never heard of another bike and another V8 bike, and found out in later years there was a couple. Yeah, this is something we put together and designed, and yeah, unique.
I think there was a bit of a story. Sorry, I was going to say there was a bit of a story to why the bike came about, and that was the guy who you were racing a pro stock car for turned around to you and said, we win. Well, I'll let Rosco tell the story, but yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously we had so before that, so the V8 bike didn't come first. Before that, I was running a pro stock car at Surface Paradise in Queensland, and anyway, ran that. We campaigned that for, I think, 3.5 years. And anyway, it's the guy that owned the car. He didn't drive it, so I got to drive in it. But Scott, after about 3.5 years, we're winning all the races, but picking up a little trophy every time we run. That'd end up in the trash, and we're going party, we're all 17, 18, whatever. We're going party, obviously, as you did then. And anyway, the trophy never saw the light of day. But after a period of time, the guy owned the car said, mate, he said, we're winning all the races. I'm promoting my business on the car, but yeah, that's not quite cutting it. The money it's costing us to run the car is not sort of giving us the kudos we deserve for the money I'm putting in. So anyway, we're quite disappointed when we heard this news. He took us down to the local pub to break the news, and anyway, one of the bright sparks in the team said, well, how about we take the engine? Would you consider donating that engine for another project? And we all looked at Earl's this guy's name. We looked at Earl and we said, well, mate, what are you talking about? No, what project? And he said, oh, we'll build a V8 motorcycle. We said, a V8 motorcycle? How would you build a bloody V8 motorcycle? And this is back in the early 70s when the Honda 4s had just came out, the 754s, and then I think a year later the Z1 900s came out with the Kawasaki. And yeah, we all had the bikes, Mr. School, and had wheelie competitions and stuff. But when the idea of building a V8 bike come up, we said, how would we do it? So the bottom line was, we sitting in the pub, we got a couple of beer coasters out. And this bright spark said, well, if we turn the engine sideways, because obviously you couldn't put it in line, be too long, put it sideways. And I said, well, that's great. But I said, buddy, that's that wide. It's a metre wide or whatever. It's that wide. And I said, how would you possibly put the drive back to the back wheel? Anyway, designed all the stuff, designed the transfer case and the transfer shaft and everything for it. And anyway, we said, that's great, but where's the clutch going to go? There's no room for a clutch. I said, we can't stick a clutch at the end of the engine. The thing's going to be 12 foot wide. And we said, oh, we won't run a clutch. And I said, well, that's right. I said, how are we going to run it? He said, well, we'll make a stand that goes under the back and we just rock it off the stand. I said, holy shit. I said, who's going to drive that? And he said, you are.
That's exactly what I would have said as well. Not the me bit. I would have said, who the hell's going to drive that? Did you have any experience on bikes at that point, or did you were you just in cars?
No, I used to ride road bikes and run around the racetracks, never professionally racing, but I held the wheelie championship in Surface Paradise for many, many years, so I could get on the back wheel and 900 whacker and wave the Sheilas on the bus and stuff like that. And yeah, it was went a bit nuts on the bike, but yeah, I had a lot of motorcycles, had a lot of crashes on them too, and luckily survived them. But yeah, they were great days.
I tell you what, just having the balls to I just imagine being sat there on the start line. Was it a switch for to knock the stand out, or however you disengage the stand? That moment must have been the kind of, I would feel at least, the most pressure. Like no, and then just see the bike go.
Yeah, well, the whole run really was pretty scary because you could never predict.
But once you press the button, that's it anyway, right? You've got no choice.
Yeah, but it's just actually just a straight stand that's set underneath sat on the ground behind the wheel. But as soon as you had to rock it off with your feet, so you rocked it off the stand. And but as I say, at that stage, the tyres doing God knows 10,000, no, probably 8,000 RPM, whatever, heaps. But it always depended on what you ride, depending on how the tyre pressure, ambient temperature, stuff like that, how much traction, VHT traction compound was on the track. Sometimes you'd come out quite a bit straighter, and other times it was completely go round on you, and you never knew what you had. But and in saying that, I and another guy, Wally Pushki, who rode it really successfully. We both had a few slides down the track. We've 170-mile-an-hour slides on our leathers and stuff like that. And I always remember the worst thing with the bike is it always chased you, so if it came off, it chased you. But but be sliding down on your guts, and they that's getting a bit warm. So then you roll over on your side, then you roll over on the back, a bit like the F1 guys, motorcycles right now. But when it gets hot, you just roll over and wait to stop. But the scary thing with the bike was it always chased you. So this thing's chasing you down the track, and it's pretty scary.
When you said slides, I thought you meant just the rear tire sliding, not you.
No, coming off it. So, a couple of times. On a couple of occasions, the chain would lock up or something and spit you off it. And
Yeah, the funny thing is I've seen a few pictures of it, and he wears no gloves, no goggles, and an open face helmet.
I saw that. I saw that on the picture, actually, that you weren't wearing gloves. I thought that was just for the picture. You didn't wear gloves.
No, we did, but a couple of times you'd be out testing it or whatever.
Yeah.
We didn't want to wear our gloves out. We couldn't afford them, so
the skin will grow back. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right then, Roscoe. So after the Crazy Horse, what was next?
Well, after Crazy Horse, as I say, spat us off a few times, and I got a bit scared of it, and anyway, I had the opportunity to do something else. So what I thought we'd do is had a pretty good team around us. I thought we'd build a rocket-powered bike. And the thing with a rocket-powered bike is it's got to have it had two rocket engines on it, two 1,000-pound thrust rocket engines. And the thing is, it would run straight. So what we want to do is set a world record, drag strip record on a rocket-powered bike. And so anyway, I spent a couple of years here at home building this thing and put it all together. And then when it was time to test it, we were in contact with our Drag Racing Association here in Australia, ANDRA, Australian National Drag Racing Association. And anyway, the boss was actually the guy who was head of the organisation, was a good friend of mine. And we'd raced together and done stuff in Surfers Paradise and around the place, different tracks. And anyway, he's the one who actually canned it, which was a real disappointment. But he wrote me a letter, which I've still got sitting around here somewhere, that went through the whole thing about how dangerous rockets are, this and that, and the extremely hazardous chemicals you use and stuff like that. And at the bottom of the letter, Andrew had no idea how to scrutinise such a bike, or we don't know how it operates. And I thought, well, that's pretty bizarre for someone to put that in the bottom of the letter, saying I don't know anything about it, but they spent 3/4 of the letter telling me how dangerous and how unpredictable that acceleration. Anyway, bottom line is I couldn't make this thing run properly. I was running it on 70% iron peroxide, and I decided to go to America and catch up with one of the legends in rocket racing in America, a man by the name of Felix Fredgoski. And I rang him up from Perth and said, Fred, can I bring over one of my engines for you to have a look at and tell me where I'm going wrong? I said, I just can't make this thing run. I said, spits a lot of raw fuel out and it doesn't like the catalyst up. It doesn't work properly. And so anyway, as you did back in those days, you put the engine in an airline bag, jumped on the plane with no bad luggage and walked up LAX and out with the bloody bag. And anyway, caught up with Fred in Thousand Oaks in California. And anyway, the first thing I saw when I got to this guy's house, I always recall, was pulled up in my hire car out the front and walked to the front door and ran from the front door all the way around the front of the house and around the side. I counted 36 barrels of rocket fuel. It's hydrogen peroxide rocket fuel. And this is bad, pretty bad, yeah, really bad stuff. All in his aluminum FMC barrels. And anyway, Fred answered the door and said, "Oh, shit, how you going, mate?" Had a bit of a powwow. And I said, "Mate, they're empty barrels." He said, "No," he said, "they're all full." And I said, "Well, why do you store them here?" And he said, "Oh, the workshop's full." He said, "Exactly, full of hydrogen peroxide and all my toys and stuff, and it's the only place I can store it." So anyway, amazing guy. But bottom line was, we looked at the engine. He said, "Mate," he said, "this." He measured it up. Said, "This is identical to the first engine I ever built, first rocket I ever built." And he said, "How did you get the specs?" And I said, "Well, mate, I never made high school. I'm a dummy." And I said, "All I could do, I wanted to build a rocket." And I went to local library and read what I could, throat dimensions, exhaust diameters and stuff like that, throat designs, and injectors for them, all the catalysts for the engine. Anyway, he said, "Oh, it's amazing." He said, "Anyway," he said, "Can we pull it apart?" So it was all bolted apart. And before he got the end cap off it, he said to me, "What sort of how many screens you got in the catalyst?" And I said, "2." He said, "2?" Anyway, continued to pull off. I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well," I said, "How many you guys run?" He said, 100. I said, "Oh." So this stuff's $15 a square inch where I come from. And I said, I couldn't afford 100 screens. And anyway, that was that. The other thing that came up was I said, "I'm using 70% hydrogen peroxide." He said, "Well, it won't work for 70%. He said, "You're going to need to go 90 or 95% hydrogen peroxide, rocket grade peroxide." So that was the stuff he had around the house. And anyway, so that was that. I thought, okay, I've got to go back and do something. But yeah, while I was there, and I spent a couple of weeks with him, and had some real exciting times with Fred. He's a real character. And but in the roof of his garage, he had this rocket go-kart hanging in the shed. So I'm looking at that, and I said, "Mate," I said, "Shit," I said, "What's the story with that?" And he said, "Well, there's 3 of them made," and he said two of the previous guys that ran them were killed. The tyres would blow on them, and they go. Those days, all they had drag strips with Armacos. And when the tyres blew, they'd go under the Armaco, and 2 guys were killed them. And he said, "That's the only one left in existence." And he said, but he said, "That's never coming down from that roof." He said, "Oh, jeez." And anyway, I kept working on him, had a few beers over the next few days and whatever. And probably a week later, we took it down out the roof of the shed, blew the tyres up, filled the tyres up with nitrogen. He had to rent that truck, set up all the rocket stuff that he ran, because he ran rocket funny cars and rocket dragsters. And we took it out to a track out in the back of Van Nuys, California, and and put some gas in it, put some hydrogen peroxide in it, and this ran as a how can I describe this? Hydrogen peroxide could work as a monopropellant. So in other words, it doesn't need you can buy propellant, you can obviously put JP1 or kerosene with it and boost the power in it, but it works really, really well just by itself. So it's one of the only oxidizers that can work as a solo, if you like. So anyway, we filled it up with hydrogen peroxide. I had to buy 2 barrels of hydrogen peroxide, and back then they were about $300 a barrel, which back in the early 70s, that was a lot of money. And anyway, we filled the hydrogen peroxide tank up. We filled the other tank up with nitrogen to blow the propellant, the oxidizer into the engine. And anyway, so I'm sitting in the car ready for my first run, and had no idea I was going to America to have a ride. As I say, it was just a recce mission to find out what's wrong with my engine. So I'm sitting in there, I've got Fred's fire suit on. He was a big guy, I'm a little guy, but his fire suit on, it's all Teflon line gloves, helmet, Teflon line, everything, Teflon gloves. Anyway, so then we purged the thing. So the deal was to purge it, and but just before we purge it, there's a thing called a dome loader, regulator. So he's cranks the regulator, and he said, "I'll give you 10% power." I said, "Fred, what's the point of running the bloody thing with 10% power?" He said, 10%. He dragged me out of the thing. He said, "Mate," he said, "this thing will kill you. It's very, very fast." Anyhow, slammed me back in the seat, and I'm spinning like 10% bloody power. Anyway, so the deal was then to purge it. So you sat in the car, then the first thing you had to do, obviously all the fuel lines are empty. So you jump on the throttle, blast a bit of hydrogen peroxide through, fill the lines up, But the thing you've got to do is get the hydrogen peroxide into the catalyst on the engine. So you can imagine flywheel screens, if you like, that are that thick, that are, you know, probably 5 inches thick, 5, 6 inches thick, with 100 screens. You've got to blast it into that catalyst and get that catalyst cooking. So as soon as the hydrogen peroxide hits that catalyst or that silver screen, it decomposes rapidly, generates a heap of heat, and that's what you've got to do. But the bottom line is the catalyst is cold, the lines are empty. So boom, the first one you blast it through. So as soon as I did that, a heap of steam and that came out, and hydrogen peroxide burning my eyes, burning my fingers, burning everywhere. God almighty. And but this is bad stuff. Anyway, next hit it again, and the car jumped a bit, and I thought, yeah, okay, you're getting there. He ran down to half track and he said, right, I'll give you the thumbs up. So he said, hit it 3 times, purge it 3 times. When you've done that, I'll put 2 thumbs up, and then so the catalyst is cooked. He said, when you see 2 thumbs up, he said, go at leisure. So this car's got 2 parachutes. It's got 2 parachutes behind me, head little cans. I'm sitting there singing all the time. I'm thinking, God, what a wanker, 10% power. So next thing, light. So I had a pro tree set up, light flash up. He said, don't worry about the lights, just go when you're ready. So I'm sitting there. As soon as the tree flashed up, I hit the gas. And all I saw was straight out the corner of my eye. Oh, holy run. Anyway, reached the end of the track, put both chutes out, turned around in a full circle, had an altitude dump on the front of it. So the nose come up, had a dump on that, had a nitrogen dump, had 4 different dumps on it. Everything got triggered on there to stop it. And I'm sitting in the car, and they've got even hard going with this. Holy shit, how cool is that? That was 10% power. Fred jumped the pickup truck, he come down, he said, you stupid little Aussie bastard. He said, you put 2 parachutes out. He said, you've dumped the nitrogen, you've triggered that, you've done this, you've done that. It's going to take us probably 3/4 an hour to turn it around again. I said, thank Christ for that. Yeah, she's a wild ride. So, we went from 10% power, I think. 10% power, I think the best we got up to was 42, 45%, something like that. So this thing never run at full power. And if it did, as I explained to people, the power this thing had, if you're sitting in it and you pointed it up, someone stood on its tail and hit the rocket, that's where it'd go. Because it had that much power. It had a 1,000-pound thrust engine on it, and if you run at full power, that's where it'd go. But anyway, from that time on, I knew that every vehicle I ever had from there on, I didn't do these piston-powered cars. They're too much work. They're too hard. Thrust is the way to go. So, everything I've ever had since then has been thrust powered.
Yeah, I mean, you ended up recording, what was it, 253 miles an hour in 5.97 seconds over the quarter mile. So,
yeah,
in a go-kart, 407 kilometers in less than 6 seconds.
Yeah,
kilometers an hour. Yeah.
And what's the limiting factor from stopping you going more quickly? Would the thing just break? Would the chassis break, or a hub or something?
No, the tyres would break.
The tyres.
I think we blew the tyres up to 95 psi, but they're ready to explode. So little go-kart tyres, but obviously they're new tyres. They're really good quality tyres. But if you had a photo of them, they'd look like that. They're just ready to explode. And so that's a limiting factor, just a diameter of the
right. Because are they kind of standard go-kart tires? Because it surprised me that you'd say that they run such high pressure. Because when you look at a top fuel dragster tire, they run like 8 or 10 psi. They're like really soft, right?
Well, yeah, sometimes not even that, but yeah, you're exactly right. But it's a different thing. They're trying to get traction on a big surface. We're not worried about surface.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it's rolling on that thrust power, so it's rolling on that. But we're rolling very, very fast, and obviously a little tire like that, just trying to expand till it blows. And so nitrogen makes it a lot safer, but still the tire's running right on its rugged edge. And as I say, 2 guys have been killed before in this thing, so that was pretty awesome. But the cart's still around, Scott. It's still, we got it here in Perth. It's at our museum, the Automotive Museum here in Perth, and it creates a lot of interest with people looking at it. And,
I read that. Would you get in it again?
Oh, mate, I think I am mad. No.
Yes, yeah, I do.
I'd love to run again, but as I say, it was just sort of one of those things that right on the ragged edge running it. obviously to run it slower, or maybe put that same engine in a heavy, like at a dragster or something. And so, well, you know, people, with the rocket, people don't appreciate how much power they make. And one of the big things is, you know, people say, well, how many horsepower is it? When you say, well, little engine behind me, I don't think it's a little English British stator. It's a Stentor rocket. It's in the back here somewhere, but it's a 7,000 pound thrust rocket. But when people say, well, what's that equate to in horsepower? Well, that's 7,000, equates to 7,000 horsepower. So if you see a little rocket that big that makes 7,000 horsepower, obviously needs tanks and stuff to make it operate. But that's pretty amazing. And other guys say to me, well, how the drag racing guys figure that it's 7,000 pounds? That's always thrust times velocity over 550, and that's always been 550 to bring back the horsepower. So thrust in pounds force, and velocity in feet per second. So over 550, and it usually equates to that's exactly 7,000, about 7,000 horsepower. Yeah.
Okay, so Rosco, after the jet kart, what was the next vehicle that you were working on and driving?
Well, after the rocket go-kart, and I came back again, obviously with the engine back from America, and knew how to get it going. And then what I did, I imported a couple of barrels of hydrogen peroxide. I snuck them out of America. You weren't allowed to transport it then, and I got them out of America, got them back home, and started testing the rocket bike. So got a catalyst together for it, started testing it at a local road, a new highway that was getting built at the back box here, and it was shut, it wasn't opened yet, so I used to run it out there, plug it in there and have a play with it. In the meantime, I was still working with Andrew to try and get permission to run it, and and could never do that, so I ended up hanging a bike on the shed here, and then one day in a fit of madness, I chopped it up and threw it out, which the missus still not too happy about. But anyway, then decided to get back into drag racing. So I was lucky enough to hook up with Australian legend Ken Warby, MBE, who holds the world water speed record. And Ken invited me to join him with a jet car, putting together a jet car tour of America and Australia. And anyway, so the deal was that I had to help build one of the cars to make it happen, and one was already underway at another location. And I had to go to Chicago and work with the car that I now own, what I call Aussie Invader 1, but it was a jet-powered car. It was built by a guy called Romeo Palomides in Chicago, and so I moved across to Chicago for a few weeks. I did most of the hard yards and got this thing together. And anyway, we raced those cars side by side, and put on a hell of a show Australia-wide. And anyway, I ended up owning that car. So it was called US Invader at the time when we had it, and then I named it Aussie Invader and ran it for possibly 15 or more years here in Australia, running against top fuel dragsters and funny cars and all sorts of stuff. So we raced anyone or everyone, and and got paid to do it. That was the difference. We got paid to appear.
I've got a picture of it in front of me, and it looks like a kind of the same long shape as a top fuel dragster, but with a rocket on the back of it, right? Was it 5,000 horsepower, something like that?
Yeah, 8,000 horsepower. Yeah, 8,500. Yeah, yep.
And so then moving along, it's interesting to see how your kind of the speed developed and the vehicles developed as well. We moved on to the Aussie Invader 2, which was that in the early 90s where you started working with that car?
Yeah, well, I suppose I should have mentioned before, Scott, that the thing is that 12 years of age, I said, I said to my mates at school, I said, I'm going to be the fastest man on earth, and that came about. I was in a home for wayward sort of kids, and we used to we'd hear on the radio about Donald Campbell running here in Australia. That's 1963, and I had heroes already like Craig Breedlove and Art Arfons and a few guys like that were running really fast in America. And Anyway, when Campbell came out here, I said to my mates, I said, his car's pretty quick, but mine's going to go a shitload faster. And anyway, yeah, so anyhow, that was my ambition since 12 years of age. So the thing I've tried to do, mate, is it's been a 50-year apprenticeship for me. I've been on the job for 50 years now to be the fastest man on earth, and we're trying to beat that Andy Green, that rotten bloody Andy Green, who's the world record at 763 mile an hour, and a lovely man. He's been out home here. We're lovely guy. Yeah, so we're trying to build a car to beat 763 mile an hour. And yeah, so it's been a learning curve. It's been a 50-year apprenticeship for me in speed. So everything I built something that's going to go X mile per hour. You learn about how that operates, like rockets and stuff like that, and you progress all the way through. So yeah, after running Aussie Invader 1 for 15 years or more, in the interim, I said, well, we've got to build a car to go quicker than Donald Campbell's done. And so Campbell had run 403 mile an hour, 647 kilometres here in South Australia at Lake Eyre. And so we got hold of after many, many years of work, got hold of a Mirage jet engine and started building our own land speed car. So it took us 10 years to get the car together, which was a big, huge hurdle for us. But went across the lake, I think 3 times, Lake Eyre in South Australia, and learned a lot about running on salt. And the big thing we learned mainly was that obviously we had the engine sussed out. We had some pretty good RAF engine technicians and on board. But the big thing was that running these solid wheels, we had to run solid wheels because tyres weren't available anymore for high-speed cars. So if you want to run 500 mile an hour, 600 mile an hour, there wasn't a tyre in the world that you could use. Whereas back in the 60s and stuff like that, Goodyear and Firestone were in competition to make tyres like that. Anyway, so we had to make solid wheels, and we weren't the first to do it. Richard Noble in his car, Thrust 2, tried to pioneer them on salt at Bonneville, and found that he couldn't hook the car up. The wheels couldn't get traction on the salt, and what happens? You're fighting 4 gyros. So we designed another wheel that we thought would work on salt, and had a pretty sharp V profile on it, and the 4 wheels worked like ice skates that cut into the salt, and we believed they'd get a lot more traction, which they did, but they never got enough.
So Rosco, you were talking about the specific wheel design and the challenges involved with the traction, and I suppose just keeping in control of the car. But can we just take a little step back first of all? When you're designing something like the Aussie Invader 5, where do you start? And what are the biggest challenges? Like, obviously you need enough power, you need some traction, you probably need to think about the aero, but like, what are the main things that you're considering at the beginning of the design phase?
Okay, Scott, so Aussie Invader 5 is obviously the one behind us. Is that what we're talking about, or are we going back to Aussie 3, where I'm talking about the wheels with the traction, or Aussie Invader?
Oh, that was 3, was it? Okay, let's talk about let's talk about the wheels on 3 then.
Okay, so one of the things I was explaining, so Richard Noble, dear friend of ours, stays with us here in Perth, admire the guy a lot. He went in 1982 across to Bonneville and with solid wheels and tried to set a land speed record. Bottom line was, he was all over the place. It was skating. The head timekeeper at Bonneville said, mate, take it home and make it run. Don't come back till you make it run straight. So they realised then that they can never make that car run straight on salt. So then, miraculously, they found a mud lake, a mud player in Nevada that they ran the car on, which gave the car a ramp effect in front of the wheels. They could then put the car onto a softer surface, get a ramp effect in front of the wheels, which would give it traction.
Oh, right, okay.
So a lot of guys, a lot of your car guys and stuff are used to tyres and gearboxes and stuff like that. It's very hard to appreciate that a thrust-powered car, even though it's not driving through the wheels have got to stay in sync with the chassis. And if they don't, you're in big trouble because you're fighting 4 gyros. They're heavy wheels and you're fighting gyros all the time. So anyway, with Aussie 2 car, we thought, well, we've got to run on salt. The only way we're going to do it, we're going to design a wheel that's going to work on salt. So with a great help from a friend of ours, a very, very clever engineer from the Isle of Wight, John Ackers Ackwood, absolute legend. John designed a wheel for us that actually had a V profile on the rim of the wheel that when you put it on the salt, when you ran it, it cut a groove into the salt, a bit like an ice skate.
So, sorry, just to cut in, this is a V with the point out.
Yes.
On the external diameter. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not super professionally, but yeah, just an arc that like 3 mil radius on the end of a wedge shape. But the bottom line is, but the weight of the car and the 4 wheels, when the car rolled across a hard soft surface, it cut a groove in it like an ice skate.
Yeah.
So that's all the traction we have. We're running on a 3 millimeter groove, but we're getting traction on the wheel. But the difference with the way I had to drive the car was we had a shortened track, and I had to light the afterburner. I had to put it in full power really, really quickly. So I used to have to roll off the line and kick it into afterburner. So a Mirage engine put out 30,000 horsepower, whatever. I can't remember. Anyway, very, very powerful. And we had 18,000 pound of thrust on it, and it equated to something like 30,000 horsepower. Bottom line was, car would take off really, really fast, but the traction value we got still with the V-shaped wheels still wasn't enough. So all the time you're steering the car, and every time obviously you put a bit of right hand into it, one wheel would speed up, the other one would slow down, then you come back the other way, and all the way you're chasing 4 gyros all the way down the track. Anyway, bottom line is we went twice at 600 mile an hour sideways, and lucky just as I felt it going, I punched the chute out, and the parachute was 100 foot out behind the car, stabilised the car, and brought it back in line.
So a couple of things there, Rosco, if you don't mind me jumping in. Can you describe how controllable the car is? As soon as you start to feel it like you're around, or the rear, or I suppose it's pivoting around, does it come back to some degree, or is that it? You have to put the parachute out?
No, we're chasing it all the time, and the amazing thing with that, the answer to that, Scott, is you're accelerating that fast that one of the big things we did at night time, we sat down with the crew, looked at all the vision. We had 4 cameras in the car. We looked at all the vision, and when I first get out of the car after doing a run, and I was pretty happy with myself to get the car up running close to 600 mile an hour, I get out of the car, and the guys would say, "Gee, how'd it run?" I say, "Oh, it's like a bullet. I didn't even have to steer at that time." And then when we look at onboard vision, you're not even conscious of doing it. You're chasing it all over the place, but you're not even conscious of doing it. And I love a car that you can take your hands off the wheel at that speed and go straight. But yeah, it's nothing like it. So you're chasing it everywhere, and But yeah, it's quite interesting, mate. But yeah, so the wheels are a bit big issue. So that's one thing. I think we're the only guys, and I say to many people, I think we're the only guys that have set a unlimited land speed record with solid wheels on salt. And I've never heard of anyone else who has, but I believe that's true. But to pioneer these wheels on salt, but still, we cannot go on salt anymore. So this new car we've got, Aussie Invader 5, is going to run on a player type surface. So same thing I mentioned before, we need those wheels to sink into the surface of the player and get a ramp effect in front of them, and and give us some traction, get some traction in the wheels.
So you've got the Aussie Invader 5 behind you, the new challenger to try and break the land speed record. Can you just give me an overview of the car, and then talk me through the design process? What are the biggest challenges stopping you from breaking that record?
Okay, well, Aussie Invader 5R, we started on that 11 years ago, and that was after Andy Green had done his 763 mile an hour. We said, let's build a car that is going to have so much horsepower, so much power that we can reach 1,000 mile an hour, power-wise, relatively easy. But but the whole format of building the car has been one hell of a journey. So let me start from the beginning. The car started off as a bisalloy plate, a bit of plate, a 9.5 mil bit of plate that we rolled into a pipe configuration with a butt weld through it, and then in that pipe we've had to put boundary layer ribs through it. So it's got external ribs. If you look down the side of the car, it's got ribs down it. We had to make bulkheads for it and the whole thing. The car is basically a cylinder that I sit at about the 2/3 mark down it, and all the other gear fits around it. Everything on it, the wheels, the wheel bearings, the actuators, the rocket system itself, all the propellant module, everything in there. It's been designed here in the shop by us, and it's a masterpiece. It's something that NASA are looking at the what we call orbital propellant module that's in the car, the propellant system to put the two mixes, being a liquid rocket, into the engine. That's I don't know where to begin.
So you've got the body or the chassis, whatever we want to call it. What material are you using there? And so it's basically a long tube that you've fabricated and then welded at the top of the bottom. What material are you using?
That's a bisalloy, a 9.5 millimeter thick bisalloy, and which is very tough steel. Never been done before. If it has, we'd never build a car around the pipe, if you like. And it's got a V underbelly, and one of the big things aerodynamically, it's had some of the world's best aero guys work on the car, CFD guys, some really, really clever guys have done worked on it. One of the big things we wanted to do with the car is where I sit, we've got propellant tanks in front of us, we've got the nasties running underneath the floor all the way back into the engine. But the big thing with the car aerodynamically, it's got a V underbelly on it. So there's some fantastic pictures on the website of Andy Green running a Mach 1 with a 150-foot shockwave off the top of the car, 150-foot shockwave out either side of his car. That's how much aero drag this thing was creating. But the bottom line is a big flat underbelly the car had, and the pounding drag that was created with him going supersonic underneath the car, the shockwave was trying to get out all the way down the car. And what it was doing, it was destroying the player when it went. So what we've got is the V underbelly, and what we expect to see with this car when it runs supersonic is a shockwave go out like that, one off the top, and then a big V shockwave go out off the side of it with a lot less drag, a hell of a lot less drag, and with a lot more power. We believe it's a 1,000-mile-an-hour car.
So as with kind of many other forms of motorsport, it's a balance between the kind of aero and the drag, and the power that you've got available, it seems.
That's right, yeah. Well, obviously the power's a big thing. And if I just go back a bit, the history of the land speed record, as a lot of people will understand, is in the old days, a car might have gone out and 300 mile an hour. Malcolm Campbell, for example. He did a great job, and that's brilliant. So another team will come on and say, well, that's all right, but we're going to go 320 mile an hour. And that's the increments people thought about back in the days. So then they'd go out and build a car to go 320 mile an hour. They might get out and run their 320 mile an hour and set a record, or they may not. Someone else might have been a bit more thoughtful and say, we're going to build a 350 mile car, and go on and go 340 mile an hour and made their car redundant. So basically that's what's happened to us with one of our cars, with our Aussie 3 car. We designed that to go 800 mile an hour. And then once Andy had gone 763, we knew it wasn't any point pursuing it. So it made that car redundant. Now we said, well, now we're going to build a car that's got 1,000-mile capability.
And so once you go through the sound barrier, that's a forgive my kind of ignorance, but that's a very important point, right? As you say, controlling the car as you go through that point. What's going on, physically at that moment?
Well, the sound barrier is something that obviously no one knows. So obviously Andy went 1.02 Mach, went supersonic, but obviously any aircraft living is approaching supersonic. The transonic region, when it's approaching that, is where all the trouble starts. And you see the old movies with Chuck Yeager and, one of the guys trying to go supersonic back in the old days, planes falling apart. It was a shockwave just that awesome on it. Same thing with us, but the bottom line with us is we're going to get up there that quick. That is to say that it's not like an aircraft that's labouring away to get to punch through the sound barrier. Labouring away in our terms. So we're getting up there, as I say, in 20 seconds. We're getting there real quick. We want to punch through the transonic area really, really quickly and go supersonic. And the thing that's never been proven in any vehicle land bound, once it clears the sound barrier, we believe it's going to go faster. One that drags behind is going to go faster. And that's never been proved. So as I say, Andy and the thrust SSC guys just cracked the sound barrier, which is great, which is a milestone, which is unbelievable. But as I say, we got the power to punch through that, and we believe we go a lot quicker. But the limiting factor with the car is, so you asked that question before, Scott, the limiting factor on our car or any car is the wheel speed. So our wheels are doing 10,000 RPM at 1,000 mile an hour. They're experiencing 50,000 G at the periphery of the wheel. The wheel bearings are a quad wheel bearing pack. They've been designed by SKF for us, and they were designed for us. They've never been made. They made the bearings for us. They run an oil, a quad bearing pack, and they're super duper bearing. But bottom line is, as I say, the wheels experience 50,000 G, and it's ready to hand grenade. So if it goes anywhere near 11,000 RPM, the wheels are just going to explode. So that's a limiting factor with any car. And you get so many guys saying, well, why wouldn't you build them out of carbon fibre? Why wouldn't you build them out of titanium? Why wouldn't you make them out of steel? Obviously, for mass, to try and keep the mass down as you can, obviously the 7070 aluminum that the wheels are made from is the lightest and strongest material we can use at this day and age.
So aluminium's the best compromise on strength versus weight, and the thing literally just tearing itself apart from the loads going through it.
Yeah. And as I say, so many guys have contacted us and said, well, why don't you make carbon fibre wheels? And the bottom line is, you probably know yourself, whether you do or not, a carbon fibre brake, which we've run plenty of them before, rotors, they explode at 8,500 RPM. So, no one's ever got the strength into a rotation strength into a carbon fibre wheel.
Sure. And of these wheels that you've currently got on the 5, are they shaped in a particular way? Have they got the V shape to the outer diameter?
Not exactly. They're designed to run on the surface. We've got mud lake surfaces all the way around the world that we've got the opportunity to run on. 2 in America, 1 in South Africa, 2 in Australia, and possibly 1 in the UAE that some people over there have talked about making us a track. But yeah, it's got to be an alkali type mud surface to run on. So these are designed to sink into the surface. So they're not a V shape. They're a nice rounded sort of shape to sit in.
So am I right in saying that potentially you might kind of alter the profile of a wheel based on the actual surface, the density of the surface that you'll be running on, almost like changing the tire pressure of a traditional tire?
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. We actually, we've experimented quite a bit with that, but running on salt. Obviously, as the first couple of wheels we've made, we played around different profiles till we got it right. But running on the surface, the only thing we believe is going to change is how much traction we got, or the consistency on that surface, how hard or how soft that surface is. So if I can just explain this also, one of the other problems we've got when we're doing 1,000 mile an hour in this car, and the throttle's come off, obviously this car's got the nose over, want to see some serious G, but the wheels are still doing 10,000 RPM. So we've got to, depending on the track surface, we can't even calculate till we know what surface we're going to run, how long those wheels are going to take to stabilise with the chassis and slow down with the chassis. So you can imagine, car nosing over, but you've got 4 wheels buzzing around next year that are doing 10,000 RPM, and there again, it can get very, very unstable. So the car's got air brakes. We've got air brakes on the car, but we can't really open them up until the wheels stabilise, set with the car. Then we open the air brakes, slow the car down. Then we've got a high-speed parachute, then we've got a low-speed parachute. Then we've got a ground brake on the car that penetrates the floor. And then we've got a catch cable if we get into trouble at the end of the track. So there's actually 5 brake and wheel brakes. So we've got 5 braking systems on the car, but the big unknown is the traction on the wheels. And that limits us. And also, I should say, the other thing when we're accelerating, this car is designed heavy. At 6.5 tonne, weighs 6.5 tonne static. Then there's 2.5 tonne of propellant goes on board, which it brings in 20 seconds. So the car gets 2.5 tonne lighter in 20 seconds. But if you look at the way the propellant module is designed, all the propellants are getting pushed forward on it. So we're not, center of gravity is not changing too much on the car.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But if it lost 2.5 tonne off the front of the car, that would be in big trouble. But as I say, the car's just getting 2.5 tonne lighter with the load moving forward.
And they complain in Formula One about the fuel weight changing. So you mentioned earlier, it seemed that you were emphasizing that you were able to get up to the target speed of 1,000 miles an hour quickly within 21 seconds. Is that because of the space? Like, how much space do you actually need for a project like this?
Well, we've got a beautiful graph I could show you, but that's been done by the world's Well, I've been outside the world, so the Southern Hemisphere's most clever people, Rocket Lab. Peter Beckman, Rocket Lab's done a lot of analysis of the car, stuff like that. The car is going to make full power. I've got to talk miles here. Do you guys know miles? You know,
we use miles, yeah. Yeah.
In 3 miles, this car's got, with a 3 mile run up, this car's going to reach 1,000 mile an hour. And then it's got to take another 8, depending on the surface, again, 8 to 10 miles to stop it. And then with the land speed record, what we've got to do, we've got to turn the vehicle around, re-oxidise it, reshoot it, check it all out again, then run back the other way with an hour and set average of both runs to set a record.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's a total of what did you say? 3 and then 8 miles.
Then a mile through so the 340 goes through the mile, and then another 8 miles, so about 12 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I mean, it's a big distance, I suppose. Is it difficult to find a location that's big enough? I think you mentioned a couple earlier on. Are there only a few places in the world where you can do it?
Yeah. We've actually we've got 2 here in Australia. One of them we've only surveyed, which is in Queensland. We've only surveyed at this stage. Another one's up in our northwest. But the thing that we're doing, obviously, like everyone in motorsport, they're out with cap in hand trying to raise sponsorship, and which we're still doing. And as I've said to everyone, the standard question is, where are you going to run? Well, that's going to depend on the sponsor. So we've got an American sponsor, which we're working on. We've got 2 venues in America we can run at. It's an Aussie sponsor. We've got 2 venues here. If it's a South African or European sponsor, we run in South Africa. Or if our Dubai guys come through, we'll be over there. So, yeah, when and where we're going to run, it's going to depend on that sponsor who we're still working to secure.
Of course, yeah.
You haven't got any money,
Sorry?
You haven't got any money, have you?
No, but somebody listening might. So can you share what the budget for the project is?
What it is?
Yeah. So, what the budget is for the project?
2 cartons of beer and a lunch break. Yeah. But
yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. I'll be headline sponsor then. That's fine.
Well, obviously now I've got to say, this is a stage 3 project, so it's always been a stage 3 project. As I say, one of our previous cars, it took us 10 years to build it, that we set the Aussie land speed record in, we went 500 mile an hour. The second car, second land speed car, Aussie Invader 3, we went 638 mile an hour. We peaked at 638 mile an hour. And this car, as I say, man, Andy Green went out and put us at the post. So now we've built this car, but it's always been a 3-stage project where we build the car. And this car, as I mentioned, takes 11 years to build it, but everything on the car has been sponsored. So obviously it's taken a long time for that reason, where you go cap and hand or machine shop and say, can you guys make this for us? Yeah, no problem. A week later, ring them up, 2 weeks later, whatever. A month later, they get the job on the machine and do it for you, whatever. But the mums and dads with names all over the car, people joined our 1,000 mile an hour club. We've completed the car. It's taken 11 years. The car's now ready to go to a testing stage. So we've just located a site where we can test it. We've got to take it up, chain it down, put the propellants in it, and then run it at full power, set everything up on the car, engine-wise, before we go racing. So that's stage 2. And then stage 3 is still to come when we run it. And where we run it, we don't know.
Yeah.
So it's still a project.
Yeah, of course. These things take a very long time. Okay, Rosco, I'm about halfway through your book at the moment. I just wanted to mention it in case any of our viewers wanted to check that out. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for speaking with me today. I appreciate it. And if anyone wants to find out more about you and this incredible project, where should they head?
AussieInvader.com.
So I just wanted to bring Mark on for a few moments. He's the author of Rosco's autobiography. He's the author of Rosco's biography, a book that I'm halfway through at the moment. It's an absolutely incredible story. Rosco, you've had one of the most interesting lives that I've ever read about. Mark, can you tell us a bit more about the book, please?
Yeah, well, I've been working with Rosco for about 15 years, ever since really, we've started on Aussie Invader 5R, and Rosco always came out with some incredible stories. And you think, wow, that's just unbelievable. But most people would have 2 or 3 in their life, but he had hundreds. And so eventually I thought, we've got to get these stories down before they were lost or forgotten. And so it was just a bit of a project, really. I just started writing them down, and Roscoe was going away. And so I ended up asking him if he would just record some of them whilst he was driving into his phone. And then he'd send them back to me and I'd type them up. And suddenly this book took on a sort of a world of its own. So within 3 or 4 months, I'd written 80,000 words because I'd had some involvement with the project. So I knew a lot about the current project, but and I knew a bit about Roscoe's life, but not all of it. And so he obviously started telling me these stories, and they started to meld into this book, and I just couldn't stop writing it. And it's just an incredible story. You know, talk about, you know, determination and someone who just never gives up. And so I decided that people had to read this to understand exactly what Roscoe's about and the passion he has for trying to break this record. So it's self-published on Amazon, and you know, we wanted to get it out quickly because we were going to a show in Melbourne, and we were taking the car with us. So we ended up getting the book out last year, and so we've ended up. It's been on there, and it's actually been a #1 bestseller in automotive engineering and even in some of the motoring biographies, because once you start reading it, you'll understand why it's such a compelling story.
It's story after unbelievable story. It's to sound cliche, it's a page turner. I've been listening to it. I was traveling last week, and I've been listening to it while I was away. Absolutely brilliant. Available on Audible as well. I'm looking forward to it. And Roscoe, I have to say, as Mark just said, your determination and your grit and never giving up is absolutely inspirational. You've kind of made me look at my own life and think I need to push a bit harder. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and Drive61 and Overdrive, you guys. We have made some new friends, and I hope you talk to us again, Scott. Thank you very much, mate.
Definitely. Yeah. Cheers, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.